This is the Source Seeker Hour. I'm your host, Rudy Carl Alexander, but I am turning it over to my partner and friend, Sister Karen, to share with everybody about this powerful program, our 83rd program. Sister Karen, take it away.
Well, howdy, 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 family and friends and Facebook. We just want to say welcome today to the Source Seeker Hour. And we have a wonderful topic, as Brother Baruti always thinks of some of the greatest topics. And I really think they're great for discussion. So I want to first of all say welcome, Kamaria, and welcome, Lamar. We're so glad that you guys are on the show today. And we look forward to have your innocent input and for you to speak your heart's, your heartfelt opinion on what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about the royal family, as the world calls it. And in my opinion, I don't think they are the royal family. Kamara, be sure to put your mic on if you want to say anything, because I'm going to let you talk first since you have to go. But I don't consider them the royal family for me. Of course, the world does and many other people do. But hey, that's the title they've been given, and I guess they felt like they've earned that title. But what we want to ask, Kamaria, do you have the questions for today?
Yes, I do have the questions for today on my mobile. Yes. And thank you.
Okay, great. And
Okay, so it looks like you want me to get right into the first one?
No, I didn't hear you. You for some reason it went quiet on us.
Okay.
What did you say?
Would you like me to go ahead and address the first question?
Yes, please. You can tell the audience what the first question is, and you can expound on it.
Okay. So the question is American racism worse than European racism? Which is actually a really great question. From what my experience is limited as far as the race in Europe, my experience there is limited. But from what I know from a historical standpoint is that darker skinned humans have been dehumanized globally. So I definitely thought that was a great topic to start off with. And it would be, I'm not surprised. I'm saddened by what's happening as far as the royal family and their treatment of Meghan Markle. But sadly, I'm not surprised, just from a historical standpoint and the decades and generations of mistreatment of darker skinned humans and Blacks. Yeah.
I agree 100%. And Lamar, what's your thoughts on that question? Is American racism worse than European racism?
Well, first of all, I have spent some time in Europe, and I've been on 5 of the 7 continents. I still haven't been to Australia, nor have I been to Antarctica. But let me say, first of all, European racism is global. And as they dominate the globe, as I said, one of the continents I hadn't been on was Australia. Well, Australia was inhabited by indigenous Black people, but now are inhabited by primarily Europeans. There are other ethnic groups who have moved there since, but primarily, and it's dominated by European and European countries, and as is the majority of the globe, with the possible exception of a couple of parts of Asia, so-called Red China, and to some lesser degree in India. But most of the globe is dominated. The economy of the globe is dominated. The racism. Let me say this: you can't compare the racism of Europe with America, because every African in Europe is an immigrant or direct descendant of an immigrant. With a small, I don't want to be speaking absolute, with a small less than 0.0001% exception that settled there at the same time of the Ma'afa when we were settled here. So that means the vast majority moved there for greater quality of life, for economic opportunities. And quite frankly, they moved there so that they would not have to participate in a revolution in their own nation. So most of the African nations that are still to this day supplying the raw materials and the materials necessary to keep Europe on a higher standard of living than the rest of the globe are heads of state. And so they are corrupt heads of state. And that's almost throughout, and I'm talking particularly about Africa. I could go into Asia, but that's not primarily my concern. So I'm gonna stay focused on Africa. And so most of those heads of state are corrupt, and they're supplied through the back door with armament, tanks, machine guns, etc., from European nations, so that the flow of resources. Therefore, it's still massive poverty in most of the African nations, although the standard of living as of the last 10 years has increased precipitously, but it's very tenuous in terms of its stability. And so the Africans in England and France and all the anti-African, anti-Islamic, those are all immigrants to those nations. And so there's a pushback, and there is some from the indigenous population, when they take a job, when they are being educated, they feel that the resources should be spent on their own people, such as, and ironically, here in the United States, the immigrant population, both from Asia and from Latin America, are also volunteers. So when people say, there's racism, but every Asian, most Asians, and even their descendants, Asian immigrants and their descendants, still have what's known as dual citizenship. So even Chinese people who have been here 100 years, they can still go back to China if they chose to integrate and marry in China right now. And they literally come. People would, I would laugh at people from high school, when I was in high school and college, when they would say, go back to Africa. I said, no, I got an invitation that I couldn't resist. I didn't come, my people didn't come here voluntarily. So the same thing is in Europe, they're volunteers. The only people would be in this hemisphere, particularly in Brazil, where racism there is even greater than the United States, because there has been no attempt at a real democratic, a truly democratic structure, whereas the Europeans in the United States structured a democratic structure exclusively for themselves, and through a civil rights struggle, we forced ourselves into it to be included, starting with the 14th Amendment. Of course, before the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, we were not even citizens, even as we had been born here and lived here for 250 years prior to the Civil War.
Well, thank you so much. You are so educated on that. I really appreciate it. And Sister Kamaria, if you could, am I saying your name right? Okay, if you can expound upon number 2.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, Mr. Lemons, go ahead and write the book.
There you go. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
take that first question, go ahead and let us know when it's released.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so the second question is the concept of a royal family outdated and behind the times we are in? With the world changing, what is the future of the royal family? I would like to speak on that from the aspect of the pandemic. The pandemic was a global crisis. And so when we talk about outdated, that's the first thing right there. They're just going to have to figure out a way to still conduct their business and their affairs and their finances and their traditions and everything on a virtual platform. And I'm certain that's a challenge for the royal family. When it comes to outdated as far as race relations, then we could obviously see with that incredibly disappointing interview that and story Meghan was forced to live through, we can see that they're also outdated on basic decorum, a basic way to be professional around somebody that does not look like them, much less from a racial standpoint. I mean, the person who made that insane comment about her future son was not only unprofessional, and that needs to be updated. Somebody needs to be trained in the royal family. But the second thing is that from a racial standpoint, it was blatantly racist. And the royal family had a duty to expunge or get rid of that person altogether. But Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were so terrified to even speak the name of the person who did such abuse. And that gives it, unfortunately, that gives it permission to continue those outdated traditions of being out of touch with Black and brown people and that. So that's, to me, that's even bigger than the pandemic at this point. But those are the two outdated parts I see: the pandemic and them having to adjust their systems and procedures. And then from a racial standpoint, they're definitely outdated.
Okay. So, Brother Lamar, I'm going to let you expound upon that, but can I just give you 2 minutes so we can get all the questions through for Kamaria before she leaves?
Absolutely. Okay. In short, let me say this: the quote royal family is something that the Europeans of England decided for themselves. It only becomes racist when they expound beyond the borders of the so-called United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom is not this big kingdom. It's that little island in a little part of Ireland. That is Wales, that is England, that is Scotland, and a little part of Northern Ireland. That is the United Kingdom. It could fit inside the state of Michigan, and definitely inside the state of Texas. So that whole kingdom is a bunch of white people who intermarry at the top. They intermarry. The royal family is not from the House of Windsor. Actually, they're Germanic people. And they were very afraid because in 1917, in the Russian Revolution, they killed, which is also part of their family, they killed royals. So royals are very sensitive to that. And right to the point, on to Harry. Harry followed in his mother's footsteps, who was dating a person of color, an Arab person of color, about the complexion, actually maybe even slightly darker than Meghan Markle. And so there is some resentment, and so it is only racist when you go outside their borders. If a group of people say that we want to keep ourselves white, then they have absolutely their right to keep themselves white. And Harry is breaking with that trend in the 21st century global market and a global system. And I'll cut it off there. I could go on.
Okay, got you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all. You all are so educated guests. I really appreciate it. Now, number 3 says, was Meghan Markle naive to think she would be treated like other royals? Kamaria, if you could discuss that, and then we're going to let Lamar go straight into it after you.
Okay, excellent. You know, I'm not certain naive is the word that came to my personal mind. When I think about Meghan Markle and her experience with the royal family, she has so much going for herself before she even stepped foot on that island, that tiny island. She had her career. She just had herself well put together. If I were to look up a role model online, she would be one of them, simply for the fact that she carried herself with class and she had her career together in the United States well before she met and fell in love with Prince Harry. So, but at the same time, I think, not even the same time. I think there's just nothing wrong with a person being expected to be treated at the least professionally in a professional setting. And she wasn't, even if you disagree with a person with politics, or if you're not the same color, I would imagine, like, when I walk into a classroom or walk into an environment or a setting, I would expect those teachers who do not look the same as me to still treat me with the least amount of decorum and respect. And she did not experience that there. I don't think she went into the UK thinking that everybody would not be racist, but I will say she probably was unprepared for the relentless paparazzi. So not so much naivete with the royal family, but naivete with that paparazzi, because they can be quite brutal. And I don't think she was at all prepared emotionally for that. You know, she had thoughts of suicide. You know, she was deep, dark, and depressed for a long time because of the paparazzi falsifying their perception of her and her character.
Right. Okay, Lamar. Thank you.
Okay, let me see. First and foremost, we have to quickly go through a history of Meghan Markle. So, okay, you remember they kept saying she's a divorcee. That's a big thing in the royal family. So, but let's even go before that. She is, of course, an African-American whose grandmother, or unfortunately great-grandmother, was a rape victim, which was very common in the South in the United States. And so her mother was an African-American, like many of us, whose blood has been diluted by our rapist oppressor. So Meghan Markle and her mother decided at some point that she would join that and intermarry with the European, her husband, and you can look at the both of them and come up to your own conclusion about social economic disparities, etc. But in any event, and Meghan is the product of that. So Meghan almost, in most places outside the United States, she can definitely pass for white. But in the United States, we have what's known as the one-drop rule. That's why we hold on and we don't let you out. The white people don't let you in, and quite frankly, we don't let you out. If you got that, you say, no, you ain't, you're not white, even though they might be 90% white. But so the reality is, Meghan Markle left the United States, and she was actually dating Piers Morgan, and although they never got to the point of consummating the date, and he put her in the cab, as he would say, and she met because of him. She was in a different circle, and she was able to meet Prince Harry, and they began a relationship. And the family probably frowned upon that because they have they have royal traditions. It's not the United States. It's not, they don't pretend to be the United States. It's not everybody all equal. It's not all that. They have a royal hierarchy. And so Meghan appears not to be familiar with that hierarchy and the standards and the customs, and it was just too much for her because she wants to treat the world like it's the United States, and therein lies in the confusion. And so there is, as she mentioned, there was a certain decorum, but we don't know that decorum was broken because these were all confidential conversations that Meghan decided in an American way, say, I'm gonna tell everybody, because in the United States, this means something. This means something. Well, it really meant nothing there. You are, in fact, they told her, no, your son is definitely not in line to, and will never be a prince. You know, it's the same as if he, for all intents and purposes, he had been born illegitimately, as far as the crown is concerned, not in legal senses of matrimony. So it's a whole cultural difference in the paradigm, some of which they don't like to speak about.
You're so right. All right. So, Kamaria, we have time for number 4. Can you please read number 4 and go ahead and start off with that?
Sure. And right before I do, I'm going to say she didn't quite date Piers Morgan. They had a little business outing meeting thing going on, and Piers thought there was more to that coffee than she knew.
Well, that's what I said. I said that that was never consummated. She got into his elite circle, which included him putting her in a cab and sending her to a party because he had other business to attend, and he didn't think anybody of the royal family would be looking at a 35-year-old de facto African-American divorcee, but he did. And just like his mother, he broke the ranks. His mother was dating an Arab, and you could see his beautiful mother versus, quite frankly, who Prince Charles married. Not that I follow this stuff. I remember that they're on a different spectrum of the beauty thing for sure. So, but nevertheless, so that's the internal thing that's happening within the family that, quite frankly, I don't care anything about, and I only know because it's been, and I'm being saturated with it in the media, and of course, if you can't tell, I'm a historian.
Yes.
Well, that's a really great point, Mr. Lemons. Very great point indeed. The fourth question is, Marcus Garvey once stated that racism against dark-skinned people is worldwide. Has that changed today? I'll say this. I'm a natural born optimist. I really, really wanted it to be, on the way out. I really did, but it's just not our reality. I'm hopeful that one day, we can be truly treated as equals, not even so much on a small talk casual basis, but even on a systemic basis. I would love to see the day one day that Black and brown people can have equal rights with housing and equal rights with education and equal rights just in general, with being able to get more support starting up their small businesses and getting more support from banks and for loans that are not, 30% interest, just the little things like that. I think that we still have a very long way to go, but I'll always be hopeful that one day things will turn around. And the one last thing I want to say is that last year, especially when we were dealing with George Floyd, and then years prior to that, when we were dealing with Trayvon Martin and all of that, that has a deep impact on us as Blacks, because it affects us emotionally. And, it's just been really, really tough for us right now. And I don't know if the police will ever change their ways. I don't know if racism will ever be completely eliminated. I'm hopeful, but I'm not. Realistically, it's just so many onions and layers to peel back with, especially with the racial treatment of the police aspect. That's a whole nother episode. But I'm hopeful, but realistically, I don't see it changing.
Right. Okay, Brother Lamar, what about you? What do you think about it? Do you think Marcus Garvey's statement that racism against dark-skinned people is worldwide, and has it changed today?
It was, and it is, and the people on this globe who are suffering the most are people of the fuller melanated hue, the so-called darker hue, the full melanation. And if you look across the globe, and you'll see the standard of living for those of our hue are suffering the most. And the things that Kamaria referenced for equality is a thing from the United States, where we have the highest standard of living of any large group of Black people, where other people are still trying to get fresh water, where other people don't have enough to eat, who are not getting nutrition, where other people are totally housing insecure and exposed to the element. Not that some of that doesn't happen here, but for the majority of us, those are not the primary concern, especially if we don't have other issues.
Okay, great. Okay, Kamaria, I know you need to go. Do you have time to stay till 7?
Well, it is about that time for me to say my goodbyes, and I have actually, it's about the time.
Okay.
I thank you guys so much. This was a lively conversation, and it was a lot of takeaways, and so I'm very appreciative for the invitation.
Thank you so much. And we
Good night.
appreciate
Nice
you
meeting
so much.
you.
Same here.
Goodbye. Okay, so Brother Baruti, I would like you to expound upon what we just talked about, but I have one other question that I would like us to add to this. Do you feel that Meghan Markle and Harry, as well as the baby, I forgot the baby's name, but do you feel like their lives are in danger?
If that is for me, yes. I mean, in a way, because even if the royal family itself does not have a interest in, harming them, there are those within the community that are zealots for traditions and ways where they wouldn't be able to control the threat coming from that level. So yes, that is a part of what they have to deal with. And I really, I hope that they realize that when now, Harry may not have as much of a issue, or maybe he might. You can never tell with zealots, but Meghan, yes, there are some people very upset about her throwing a wrench into the tradition of the king and the queen and all of that means to that tradition of that country. So you got to be honest. It's a possibility.
Got you. I agree. What about you, Lamar? Do you feel like their lives are in danger,
Well,
especially?
I think there's a two-pronged concern there. First of all, there, as he referred to, the zealots for tradition from England and others. But then there's in the United States in particular and globally, there's the white supremacist, anti-misogynist, quote unquote, group who who are incensed that Harry broke the color line and is considered at the highest levels of society as quote the royal family, or more accurately a royal family for that little island I mentioned earlier. That in the United States there are people who are Nazi-esque, who are Klan-esque, who are white supremacists, who are vehement white extremists in the extreme, and are totally aggravated, angered, and also we also have a high mental health. Not that those people aren't also mentally unstable, but we have others who are just purely mentally unstable, who maybe want to make a name for themselves. I mean, we know the names of James Earl Ray and Sirhan and people. They become etched in history too. So the killers of assassins of also obtained a type of immortality as well. So you've got those. I said two-pronged. That's the third prong: the mentally unstable, and the white nationalists, which is a subset of the mentally unstable. But the white nationalists, the white supremacists, and of course the English traditionalists. And remember, as I pointed out earlier, the English royal family is not just for England. It is a European interbred family, including Austria, England, Russia, all those in the family. So when they killed the czars of Russia, as I pointed out, those were cousins of that same family. They were cousins. The czars of Russia were cousins to Meghan Markle's in-laws, Markle's in-laws.
They were cousins?
Yes.
Wow.
All the royal families, they were all cousins. There is no royal family, of course, in Russia anymore. Now you just have the authoritarian regime from Russia, and with Vladimir Putin and his fellow oligarchs. But before 1917, there was the royal family, and those were cousins to the English and the German and the Austrian royal family.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Okay.
little aside about that royal family, um, him and his family were killed, and it was about 7 kids, I believe.
Yes.
And they did not find them for quite a while. I think it was about 30 years before they, of course, really found out exactly what had happened and so forth. But yes, and if you look at the pictures of them, they do look like the King of England at that time, and they have a resemblance. So it is striking that Lamar says that, and the correlation of all of those families and their mindset also. I think you would say that, and that's just an amazing part of it. I wanted to say this though, talking about that last question, are things better today? I think yes, as Lamar was saying, for most of us, things are better. We do not, we live in houses, we have means, we have incomes and different things. For some of us, don't have that. But overall, the tension, the racial tension has been driving up, and it's still a continuation from the mindset of the 3/4 of a man as a vote. It's a mindset of the Civil War mentality and all the things that have transpired since the Civil War. And it's still that mindset, and they are not going to just give up that mindset without some type of conflict. And it's going to come, something is going to come. I think it's inevitable, but at what level, at what type of violence will it take place? We hope that that doesn't take the highest level, but something, you look at January 6th, and people say, well, but they didn't have guns, but they could have had guns, and they had guns, stacked away. Maybe if it was a different type of scenario, they would have took them inside. We all know that, maybe that was the decision that they made because they only wanted to go so far at that time to see what the defenses were. Don't know. We just got to speak reality. I think after that occurrence happens, whatever's going to happen, maybe 50 years beyond that, after we go through that conflict, things will be a little bit better. But we're still going to have to go through more challenges because of the nature of the environment that we are in. On the one side, we have Black Lives Matter and the rising cultural Black identity. And then on the other side, you have people talking about, hey, we got to take away their voting rights. We got to put stricter controls on, and it's a conflict. On the one hand, you got Donald Trump that got 75 million votes. Correct me if I'm wrong, he might have had more than that, but it was the greatest amount of votes that anybody ever had, except for Biden had more. So we have to look at that. There's a whole community of people that say, hey, this has gone too far.
And let me say this.
People are having, would say, Lamar?
I said he got the majority of white votes and the largest amount of white votes ever.
Yes, but the key is he got, you just can't discount him as and those people as, oh, they're fringe. No, they're not a fringe. They've taken over the Republican Party. So they are not a fringe. Now, maybe when we go to our jobs, we don't hear them talking about those type of things, or maybe we do.
Yeah, we do.
But we have to know what the real feeling is inside, and not sugar-coated that, oh, things are, no, they're not like that. They are like that. Now, there are still the majority that believe that things should be fair or have a semblance of fairness. But things are trying to be tilted. And again, you have Black Lives Matter and progressive things on one side, and then on the other side, you have those that say, hey, we need to go back to the way things used to be because these things are changing too much. So there's so many things happening across the board. I just wanted to say that. And it's very important to make good decisions and futuristic and visionary decisions and things that you are trying to do. So I just wanted to say that. Karen, I appreciate everything that you've been sharing and hosting for the Source Seeker Hour. And we are near the end, or it's up to you if you want to continue.
No, if I would like Brother Lamar, if he has more to say. I don't know if you know you're muted, Brother Lamar, but if you have more to say, I would like you to say so, and also expound upon to the Facebook family and those to our listeners, what is Zelox?
Certainly. Okay, a zealot, and that's where you get the term zeal, and it's actually a biblical reference. It's actually a reference from the nation of Israel, which was divided in various components to resistance against the Roman Empire and the various strategies. And one of them that moves away completely away from the Jewish society even, and became and practiced Judaism, were a group called the Zealots. And now in the 21st century, it just comes to anyone who has extreme zeal and commitment.
Gotcha. Okay. So I do have one other question. And do you feel that the, as we say, the darker skinned people, do you feel that we should come together as a team and prepare for what is possibly a civil war?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Well, first of all, let me say this. We have always been warred upon since our inception here. So that has been consistent, and nothing has changed on that. We were talking about George Floyd and Tamir Rice, our 12-year-old boy playing in the park with a BB gun, getting shot in 2 seconds, not even given an opportunity to stop or drop the gun, shoot him in 2 seconds because he looks like he's an adult male. The problem is, it's an open carry state. So if you thought Tamir Rice was an adult, and I get mad, I don't want to get too carried on that, then you had no right to shooting. And because it's open carry state, he don't even need a permit to carry a gun because it's open carry and it was not concealed. But he was shot, and the police officer did 0 time. And so I give him as a contemporary example of the 21st century lynching that we are all experiencing in the 21st century. So nothing has changed. They used to put ropes around our neck. Now they put knees on our neck. It's the same thing. And so it ends in death. Both cut off blood to the carotid artery, rendering you dead. And so we are being warred upon, and we pretend as if the war, and it's a one-sided war. We're being attacked, and we are not responding. And we're not mobilized, we're not organized. Now, when we say people, I don't use the term, I say melanated, fully melanated, and blessed, highly blessed with melanin. And so I don't use dark skin, dark, because that's a relative term. Dark is compared to what? To a pale skinned person? Absolutely, it is darker. but darker in the English language also had negative connotation. So let's call it what it is, melanin, melanin rich. And you can never be too dark or too rich as far as I'm concerned. So, but I'm only concerned with one particular segment of quote dark community right now, and then form alliances after that. The first segment would be African American. The second segment would be the global Africans, but first the hemisphere of us uniting. Third is always our motherland, Africa. So we need to come, those people who are direct descendants and those who will come under and admit to coming under being descendants of Africa and who are blessed with hue, we all should come together. We must unite our continent, the richest continent that is still, which is why they even allow those immigrants that they discriminate against in Europe, in England, in France. The only reason they allow because their nations are still being plundered by those same European nations. And so we need to come together step by step and build our own institutions so that we can combat the global onslaught and also be able to take care of ourselves should all of this, and it's highly probable, should all of this society collapse. And we are totally dependent. And so we will be at the bottom if we don't organize.
Right.
My good friend, Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael, and the late Kwame Ture, always said, organize, 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 and be ready for the revolution.
I
That's
agree.
powerful.
I agree 100%. Okay, well, I thank you so much and I appreciate you taking the time, Brother Lamar, to come on. And Baruti, I think you picked a great topic today. And I also thank you for allowing me to host today. And I look
Thank
forward to
you.
you guys later.
Anytime.
All right. This is the Source Seeker Hour, ladies and gentlemen. And when we're finished for today, we'll see you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.